What's up, guys? Welcome back to Axiom. It has been a long time since I posted. I've been sitting in a hospital bed for the last 2 weeks, watching IV steroids drip into my arm, dealing with an ulcerative colitis flare-up, which I don't know if you knew what an ulcerative colitis flare-up is, but it's a flame in your bowels that doesn't go away. Really bad. I'm not going to get into the details of that. But when your body starts attacking its own internal lining, you learn a lot about systemic failure. You learn that it doesn't matter how good your vision is if the hardware is literally bleeding from your body. As I sat there, I was looking at my S21 Ultra, which I broke, by the way. The screen shattered. The LCD is bleeding purple ink across the display. It's a top-tier device. High-spec, massive RAM. Incredible camera. But because the interface is compromised, the entire system is effectively bricked. This is the exact state of the social fabric between Gen Z men and women in 2025. We have the most advanced human hardware in human history. We have the highest access to information, but the interface is shattered. The communication gap isn't a misunderstanding. It's a structural threat to our species. We're experiencing a macro scale flare-up where the components of the social body are treating each other like pathogens rather than partners. In the Axiom framework, we use 10 levels of systemic analysis, but for this autopsy, we're going to aggregate those into the 3 metagroupings, which are hardware, dynamics, and architecture. If you want to understand why your life feels like a glitch and why your relationship feels like a broken game of Mobile Legends, why the world feels like it's sliding toward a planetary blight scenario, you need to understand where the decoupling is happening. This isn't a rant. This is a technical teardown. Let's look at the specs. Grouping 1 is the biomechanical foundation, which is the hardware. Grouping 1 is the foundation. It's the axiom. In the axiom hierarchy, this is the raw, unyielding reality of physics and biology. My friend used to have a 1996 Volvo S70. He had a goal for that car. He wanted to go 170 miles an hour. That's a high performance requirement, and that car's not meant to go that fast. But a 1996 Volvo was never spec'd for 170. To get there, he didn't just believe in the car. He had to look at the rods. He had to look at the thermal capacity of the block. He had to look at the fuel delivery system. If he pushes 30 pounds of boost into a stock 5-cylinder, you're not going to hit 170. You're going to blow up. This is the first point of the great decoupling. The hardware of Gen Z men and women is being spec'd for 2 different planets. For men, the grouping 1, which is hardware, is a state of unprecedented atrophy. We're seeing a collapse in testosterone levels, 1% per year since 1971. The raw biological boost required for ambition and stability. We're seeing an economic hardware failure where the traditional path to utility, which is the ability to build, provide, and protect, is being gated behind a financial system that is fundamentally rigged against the foundational tier. When a man's hardware fails, when he realizes his specs don't allow him to compete in the physical world, he does what any system does under stress. He goes into power save mode. He retreats into digital simulation. He optimizes his character in Mobile Legends because he can't optimize his bank account. He masters the assassins in a game where he feels like a minion in reality. Now look at the grouping 1 hardware for Gen Z women. Their utility has been digitized. They're being told by the social architecture that their value is hyper-individualistic. They are being given a software update that tells them to optimize for the standard, a set of hardware requirements for a partner that only exists in the top 0.1% of the population. This creates a hardware mismatch. It's like trying to run a high-end VR simulation on a Volvo ECU. The ports don't match, the thermals are incompatible. Look at the shoes I wear for running. They're barely there, like 5.2 ounce shoes. Why? Because they're grouping 1 optimization. They're not for appearance. They remove the fluff. They allow the foot to interact directly with the terrain, but modern social hardware is all fluff. We are wearing lead-weighted boots and calling them progress. Men are being weighed down by a lack of utility, and women are being weighed down by an impossible expectation of curated perfection. When the hardware doesn't match the terrain, the system fails. We are trying to build a 170 mile an hour social fabric on a foundation of stock parts that are redlining just to keep the lights on. If your hardware is failing, if you're sick, if you don't have money, if you're weak, You can't enter the conversation of flow because you're a component that is waiting to be replaced. Once you have the hardware, you move into grouping 2, the dynamics. This is the flow. This is how the units interact. In combat sports, this is the read. When I watch Andrei Orlovsky or Amanda Nunes, I'm not looking at their muscles. I'm looking at the information processing speed. I'm looking at how they respond to a feint, how their angles approach. That is grouping 2. The great decoupling in grouping 2 is being driven by the algorithmic mediation of our social lives. Once again, the great decoupling is grouping 2 is being driven by the algorithmic mediation of our social lives. We no longer have human dynamics. We have mediated feedback loops. Every time you pick up your phone, you're entering a grouping 2 environment that is designed to polarize the flow. Men are being fed a software package of resentment and withdrawal. The algorithm sees a man who is struggling with his hardware and gives him content that reinforces his isolation. Maybe nefarious. It tells him that the system is his enemy. It turns his flow into a defensive crouch. Women are being fed a software package of scrutiny and disposability. The algorithm tells them that they are the main character and that every side character, which is the men that they're not attracted to, must meet a perfect bug-free specification or they will be deleted. But the thing is, they won't even be deleted because they're never even recognized. They're invisible. When these two software packages interact, it's a system conflict error. Think about my life logging setup. I record everything. I capture the audio, the visuals, the nodes of my day. I'm trying to use AI to find the software bugs in my own life. But when I look at the social data of Gen Z, the bugs are the features. We're communicating through vibe checks instead of clear signal fidelity value checks. In our social fabric, we've stopped rotating. Men are farming in their own lane, refusing to engage with the meta that they find hostile. Women are pushing a tower that doesn't exist, wondering why they have no support. This is a structural threat. A society is just a massive collection of transactions, emotional, economic, and biological. If the dynamic flow of those transactions becomes high friction, the economy of human connection collapses. We are seeing it in birth rates. We're seeing it in the loneliness statistics. We're seeing it in the social ulcerative colitis flare-up that is burning through our cities. We replace rational dynamics with adversarial game theory, unwittingly, in a game where everyone is trying to win and no one knows the goal. What happens? The system itself loses. Then we hit the ceiling. The architecture. This is the why. This is the worldview. This is where the Axiom brand actually lives. This is the layer that dictates the other two. In an old game that I used to play called Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, you have many different factions. They all have the same hardware, and they all use the same dynamics, but they're at war because the architecture on this foreign planet that they are transported to is incompatible. One faction believes in the survival of the fittest, another believes in a hive mind, another believes in the free market, another believes in unbounded research, another believes in religion. The great decoupling is ultimately an architectural collapse. The architecture being pushed on men is one of the sovereign outlier. It's this kind of Darth Vader worldview, but without the empire. It's a vision of power through isolation. I become so strong, so rich, and so detached that the system cannot hurt me. It's a goal where the architecture of the goal is defensive autonomy, which is toxic. The architecture being pushed on women is one of the sovereign critic. It's a vision of power through curation. I will build a life that is a perfect aesthetic. I will only allow components into my system that enhance the brand. It's an architecture of curated autonomy, which sounds an awful like a business. Maybe it is. Do you see the problem? Both architectures are built on autonomy. Social fabric is the opposite of autonomy. Social fabric is interdependence. A fabric is made of threads that are woven, meaning they're restricted by each other and also strengthen each other. They're bound together. But our modern social architecture tells us that the bond is a bad word. It tells us that any limit on our individual flow is an act of microaggression. When Darth Vader looked at a galaxy, he saw a broken system that needed a unified architecture. He was a monster, but he was a systemic monster. He understood that without a shared blueprint, you just have chaos and the force being wasted on petty squabbles. We are living in the squabble. We are level 1 architects trying to build a level 10 civilization. If we don't fix the architecture, if we don't decide on a why that includes both the masculine utility and the feminine vision, then the hardware and the dynamics don't matter. You can have the fastest Volvo in the world, but if you don't have a map, you're not going anywhere. The structural threat to our social fabric is that we've forgotten how to build. I'm looking at the ruins of our social system, and I'm trying to draw a new set of plans. That's what Axiom is. It's the attempt to create a third architecture that isn't based on resentment or validation, but systemic excellence. So here's the autopsy report. The hardware is redlining. Men are losing utility. Women are losing reality. The flow is stagnant. Our dynamics are being sabotaged by algorithms that profit from our loneliness. The architecture is missing, where we've replaced vision with aesthetics. If you're a man, fix your freaking hardware. Get your testosterone levels up, get in the gym, build your economic utility. Modify your engine until it can actually handle the thermals of the real world. But don't do it to show off. Do it for yourself so that you can build and optimize. If you're a woman, stop being a critic of the system and start understanding that you exist as a stakeholder. Recognize that a perfect spec partner is a digital hallucination designed to keep you subscribed to a platform and to recite a script. The great decoupling ends when we decide that the social fabric is worth the friction of interaction. I'm recording this because I believe in the system. I feel like crap. I believe in Axiom. And I believe that if we can identify the groupings, we can fix the bugs. My hardware is healing. Physically, I mean. My dynamics are being optimized, and my architecture is being written in real time as best as I can. The social fabric is tearing, but we still have the needles. We just have to remember how to sew. Say systemic.